Of the game, you know that Michael Jordan has broken his 2-week silence.
I know it's going to be a lot of opinions about who's the greatest team ever.
A sense of motivation and a sense of to prove something as a basketball player. It's time for me to move away from the game of basketball.
Where was Michael Jordan in 1993? It's like asking where the Beatles were in 1964.
I think I'm gonna be sad.
Riding High doesn't even begin to cover it.
I wanna hold your hand.
After years of grinding and waiting for the world to recognize his talent, Michael Jordan and the legendary Bulls had just come off their first three-peat, largely due to Jordan's performance and standards. You play as hard as you physically can. And Michael wasn't just thriving on the court, he had gained a level of celebrity that few people in the history of the world have ever had. So nobody, and I mean nobody, expected what happened next. Michael Jordan was quitting basketball for good. There would be no more three-peats, no more dunks from the foul line. No more basketball from the greatest player to ever walk the earth. I can't understate how stunned Chicago and the entire world was by this announcement. So here's the obvious question. What could have possessed Michael Jordan to leave basketball and his fans, his friends, his teammates behind? In this case, there are many possible reasons why MJ chose to prematurely end his reign, but be careful. There are as many half-truths and speculations as there are answers. If you enjoy our fast break, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more bios like this. So let's go back to that fateful day, October 6th, and find out.
What happened?
The day the dribbling died. It was bright and early at 10 a.m. when the press conference kicked off at the Bulls training facility. But of course, it was anything but routine. Press conferences for the domineering Bulls could often draw a crowd, but on this day, it was a who's who and standing room only. Everybody who was anybody was there for the same reason, to understand why Michael Jordan was quitting basketball. Finally, Jordan spoke. He gave a vague reason for his abrupt withdrawal. He felt like he had reached the pinnacle of his career, he said, and that there was nothing left for him to prove. In short, he had become the greatest player of all time, so what was the point of continuing? To some at that fateful press conference, that was a satisfactory answer. Of course, not everybody agreed that MJ was the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Especially considering that at only 29, he'd hardly dominated for decades. But you could certainly make an argument in favor of the point, and so it wasn't an insane proposition on MJ's part. However, many suspected that he wasn't saying the whole story. While plenty of athletes have fulfilling and rich lives outside of their chosen sports, MJ wasn't your average professional athlete. Michael Jordan was a perfectionist, and perfecting basketball was his life mission. But who would he even be without basketball? There had to be something else. There was one thing that Jordan said that seemed substantial, that people held on to. That several years from now, he said he may return if he felt like it, and if the league would let him back. This kind of sounded absurd. Why wouldn't the NBA let the best player and cultural icon back? But Michael wasn't spilling any beef about other reasons for his departure. He rattled sabers with reporters, calling out the ones he had beef with, and ridiculing those who he accused of peddling conspiracy theories. At one point, the speakers cut out, and Michael and the reporters couldn't hear each other. No matter how loud they yelled, it was a pain in the butt, but the symbolism was apt. They would have to go elsewhere for answers. Fortunately, they had a pretty good place to start. A horrific tragedy that had recently fallen upon Michael, and it seemed like it had to have something to do with his retirement. A father's dream. Nowadays, many professional athletes are discovered and nurtured so young that they develop closer relationship with their coaches than their own parents. Most infamously, LeBron James was basically raised by his coaches after he was discovered in Cleveland. But that of course was not true for Michael Jordan's relationship with his fam. James R. Jordan, Michael's dad, moved around a lot, from North Carolina to the military, to Brooklyn, where he wanted to use his GI Bill for job training. and also where Michael was born, and then back to North Carolina. But instead of straining his relationship with his family, the constant moving around made James cherish every moment with them. Even after Michael became famous, James didn't sit back and enjoy the fruits of his son's labors. The guy was right there for his son, refusing favors and even offering to renovate his house. One of the only exceptions to this attitude was when James accepted a championship ring that Michael gave to him. The elder Jordan wore it proudly, and tragically, it may have played a role in his own demise. On a quiet day in July, James pulled his car over to the side of the road to take a nap after a long day of golf and driving. He was driving a new car Michael had just bought for him and was wearing the aforementioned championship ring. And it is stated that before the man could wake up, 2 teens shot him to death as he napped, stole his car and ring, and dumped his body in a river. This event was obviously a horrific tragedy for the whole family, and we can barely imagine the impact it had on Michael. His dad was his mentor, his best friend, his everything. But what did it have to do with Michael quitting his love of basketball? A Father's Dream Part 2. Michael's father was always very supportive of his son's basketball dreams. He made sacrifice after sacrifice to make his dreams a reality. But secretly, it had never been his biggest dream for his son to play basketball. Instead, the senior Jordan had always secretly hoped he would pursue baseball. From an early age, MJ showed signs that might follow that path too, excelling in America's pastime through high school. It wasn't until he began to play varsity basketball and dominate his opponents that he really made his choice. But even as MJ went from high school to set records at UNC, then from UNC to the NBA, the elder Jordan always secretly harbored that dream of seeing his son excel on the diamond. So I'm sure you're familiar with MJ's short time in the baseball world, after retiring from basketball in a huge manner.
An opportunity just to go out there and see what type of skills I have.
He tried his hand at AA ball, and while he was not abysmal at any rate, he also wasn't anything special. He batted a little over 200, while also leading the league in strikeouts. But boy, did people come out to see him play. And if any of you did, please tell me in the comments.
What a day for Michael Jordan!
And while he would not admit it, it seems possible that losing his dad made MJ realize that while sports could take him to the peak of celebrity and success, they could not solve and were not everything, and they couldn't bring his father back. With all that in mind, what was the point of continuing? He might as well play baseball where he could at least follow his dad's dreams. Now I agree, this all seems very plausible. Why else would Jordan pursue baseball all of a sudden? It's pretty random. But unfortunately, it's not the story that all have accepted, and some people choose to believe a more scandalous side of MJ's choice. All in. Now, it became widely known that MJ was a big fan of gambling. It seems everybody who knew him has a story or two about his legendary tendency for betting on anything, and of course, doing anything to win. Consider the tale about the time he bet thousands with his teammates on whose luggage would come through first after a flight. For decades, these stories have been part of the Jordan mythology, playing a key role in the cultural force that is Michael Jordan. They illustrate both his larger-than-life personality, how he had become so successful that he threw around cash to feel alive, as well as his absolute ruthlessness and need for victory. But it turns out that MJ's gambling habit may have been more than just a personal vice. I've compiled some facts here. Number 1, in 1992, after winning his second championship, Michael was called to testify in the criminal trial of James Bowler to explain why Bowler, a convicted drug dealer, was in possession of a Jordan-signed personal check for $57,000. Fact 2, in 1993, a businessman intimate with Jordan claimed that MJ had paid him almost $1 million from gambling dues. And fact 3, after the Bulls won their third championship, the NBA launched an investigation into Jordan's gambling problems, trying to see whether he had violated any league rules. Officially, the investigation never resulted in any charges, but in conjunction with MJ's mysterious tone at his press conference, all these facts come together to make not an answer, but a suggestion. Is it possible that Michael Jordan's gambling became such an issue that the NBA forced him into a temporary retirement, and Michael used baseball as an excuse or a replacement? Is it also possible that Jordan's gambling wasn't limited to cards or golf? That maybe he bet on sports too, maybe also professional basketball? Of course, we don't know this for sure, and even if it was true, it doesn't mean that MJ didn't want to follow his dad's dream of playing baseball too. But money, not passion, makes the world go round, and it's certainly plausible that this is what happened. The truth may have been hidden by distractions, money, PR, and the passing years, but somewhere it lives on. For many celebrities, life in America is centered around fans. Actors, athletes, musicians, it doesn't matter. You get famous by being good enough at something and people love you and follow you. But certain celebrities are so big that these simple rules of life don't apply to them. You're simply known and respected, and in some cases, hated by everyone. And this level of fame and power is true of politicians, as well as Michael Jordan. He very well may be the best basketball player of all time. So now I want to know what you think. If he's not the best, who is? And why do you think Michael Jordan quit basketball for baseball? What do you remember about the NBA during Jordan's reign? Get in the comments and tell me your thoughts. And if you enjoyed our layup here, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel and come back often so we can keep telling you
What happened?